morning, everyone. This is Kathy Mason from MasonWorks Marketing here on Conscious Business Zone with my friend, Kellan Fluckiger. How are you?
I'm spectacular. Delighted to see you. We haven't talked for quite a little while.
Oh, yeah.
I'm grateful to be here with you.
Oh, ditto. So for everyone that's just meeting Kellen for the first time, Kellen is an amazing coach and mentor. And I took a class with him, or a course with him, a coaching course with him for, I think, 2 years, called The Results Equation, which was just remarkable. And during that time, he got sick. And we're going to talk a little bit about all of that. That was quite remarkable too. So Kellen, and Kellen's a powerhouse, you guys. He's an incredible speaker. That's how we got signed up with him in the first place. We went to the Impact event with Ken,
MacArthur.
MacArthur, thanks. That keeps happening. Last names don't.
Maybe there's only one name in the afterlife.
Oh, that's perfect. Okay, so Kellen, why, for people that are just learning about you, what would you like them to know, just so that we can set the stage for what we're going to talk about?
Well, I've had a lot of interesting things happen in my life. Very long and messy stuff, and we'll talk about some of those today. Today, I'm only doing one thing. My commitment this year, and my year starts October 14th, which means I only have 2 months left in my year, but my commitment this year is to reach 250 million people to help them understand who they really are. Now, you know, as a sort of follower of this conscious movement, what that means. But it means to understand your divine nature, capability, possibility, to really viscerally, internally understand that, and then to choose to create from that infinite place instead of from limitation and lack. So I'm a coach. I have clients around the world, but I only do one thing. My business plan's really simple. It says I never look for clients. I look for people to love, opportunities to serve, and problems to solve. This journey started 17 years ago in August of 2007 with a divine intervention that had me leave a 30-year corporate career, literally abruptly, and start off in a new direction. Walked away from everything and started all over again. And I've been on that journey fully and completely ever since for the last 17 years. And in that process, I've become an author. I've written 19 books. I am a composer, musician. I have 91 songs right now in commercial release on all the platforms. I speak a lot, et cetera, but all of it, and the results equation that Kathy referred to earlier is one of the books. All of those things that by themselves are like, yeah, whatever. They're aimed at sharing the things I've discovered and providing tools and frameworks to people to eliminate fear, obliterate doubt, and help you create the things that you want to create, that you deserve, that you can have. They're right there to take. You can create them from the conscious unified field if you want to, if you will access the power and the tools that are available. And that's all I do. And so all the books represent learnings that I've done. I wrote a book about forgiveness, and I wrote a book called The Story Arc, which is about helping people writing books. But it's all aimed at assisting people like you who are committed to living powerful lives instead of with the easy and obvious. And that's what I do. That's all I do. But it's fun because I'm still doing music. I've got 3 more songs that'll go up pretty quick. And I just had a delightful conversation right before this with a fellow I'd never met before. He saw me speak somewhere and was just anxious to reach out. And we had a deep and powerful conversation, and that will continue. And in that process of serving and loving is where all the magic happens, because we're built to love and serve each other.
So perfect. And everyone, I seriously highly recommend if you're looking for a mentor slash coach, that Kellen will hold your feet to the fire and ask you the questions that you didn't want anyone to ask you because you can't hide anymore. But yeah, I miss you. I miss you a lot.
Well,
So
thank you.
life happened. Life happened to me, so I had to shift. But I really miss you and Joy a lot. I really have benefited tremendously from our time together.
Well, I want to really honor you for this work that you're doing, for your conscious marketing, for the books you help publish, for the intuitive guidance you give people in their marketing, and for the effort that it takes to put on a show like this. So I want very much to acknowledge you, to honor you for the love and passion that you put into the work that you do and the person that you're being.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, you saw me before. So you saw me before. That was 5-6 years ago.
Yeah, I think that was
Maybe.
2017, so 7 years ago.
Yeah. So let's give people a little bit of an idea about your your journey. You're teaching classes and or coaching groups, kind of, and working one-on-one with people, and all of a sudden you don't feel well. And do you want to share the near-death story a little bit here? And then what I thought we'd do is talk about the IANDS thing at the very end, but get people so they really know you for the bulk of our conversation.
Okay. Well, in 2018, like I mentioned, my spiritual journey, as it were, awakening happened in 2007. I was a big shot executive, and I was a mess. I was a drug addict, $3,000 a week, cocaine addiction. I'd attempted suicide a couple of weeks before, and some dramatic stuff happened in August of 2007 that made me walk away from everything I'd been doing and start all over again. In that process, I began to write books, and I created a coaching practice. I hadn't been a coach before that. I'd been an executive and that sort of thing, but it was making radical changes in my own life and realized that those would be valuable to people. So that's what started me in the coaching direction, was a desire to be of service, because I saw, all this stuff that's happening to me, it could really be helpful. So I went along for 11 years, and now we're in 2018. My coaching practice is well established. I'm running several coaching groups of different kinds and private coaching clients. I'd written several books and so forth. Joy and I went on a cruise. We'd never been on one before, so I don't know why, we just hadn't. But we went on a cruise, and I got sick at the end of it, and I came home, and there's a whole story there. But I'll tell you the crux of it. So finally, we got home from the cruise, and I got sicker and sicker and sicker. I got sick on Monday in Oslo, Norway, and we were going home the next day, so there was no real need to change flights or anything. So I came home and didn't go to the doctor for the week. I didn't go till Friday, and Friday I went to the walk-in clinic that they have here in Canada, and I've been going downhill all week. They wouldn't let me in the walk-in clinic, and they told me immediately go to the ER. They couldn't do anything for me. So that was kind of a wake-up call. I went there and to the ER, and immediately I was taken in, like literally in 10 minutes. So I must have, really scared the crap out of people. I don't know. But anyway, over that afternoon and evening, I got worse and worse. And the doctor came in, and, they were MRIing and X-raying and all that kind of stuff, and kind of went like this: well, at least you have pneumonia in both lungs, but there's something worse. Then they came back and said, yeah, we're going to put you in the ICU. Then they came back and said, yeah, we're going to put you in biological isolation. So, I don't know if you know what that is, but that is double door, airlock, hazmat suit, that. Okay. And then they came back and said, well, is it okay if we intubate you and do anything we need to do to preserve your life? And I said, what? And I said, yeah. So then I went into meditation and realized I could feel my body and spirit separating. It was like unzipping. I could feel a zipper sort of effect, and I knew I was dying. So the next thing I know, So I did. I flatlined. I was in the ICU and I flatlined and died. I came to spiritually horizontal, like I was on the table, and sat up, but the scene had changed. It wasn't ICU full of frantic people trying to revive somebody and all the stuff you'd expect. It was a gray sort of room. And by gray, I mean soft, kind of a little bit foggy, kind of like photo card gray, if you know what that picture looks like. So I sat up and I looked over my shoulder, and over my left shoulder, there was a doorway. And for some reason, I wanted to be at the doorway, and suddenly I'm at the doorway. And I'm leaning on the door jamb on my right shoulder. And I noticed that on the other side of the doorway, it was white, and my side of the doorway was gray. And there wasn't light streaming through. It was just white on that side and gray on my side. And then I saw someone on the other side standing on that white side, leaning on the door jamb, just like arm's length away. And that individual looked at me and he said very clearly, "Do you want to come home?" And so in an instant, I knew who I was talking to, what the doorway was, and what the question meant. So we talked about it for a while, about what had happened 11 years before with the divine intervention, what I'd been building since then, and all the things that had gone on. And then I thought about everything, and we talked about what else there was to do and what I had planned to do and all of the rest of it. And finally, I answered the question. I said, "Well, I'm not done." And he said, "Okay." And that was the end of the first conversation. I'm quite sure that's when they were able to restart my heart. The next day, and when I tell this story, people always ask, "How do you know it was the next day?" And the answer is, I don't know. You just know. The next day, I'm back at the door, same person, same doorway, same situation. And the topic of the previous day didn't come up because that was decided already. So then the topic was, "Okay, you're staying. So what are you going to do?" And I said, "Well," and we started talking about all the things that I had planned to do. And I had written several books and had several more to write, and people to reach and messages to deliver, and the things that the things that we feel called to do. And so I was excited about that. And then I had an experience suddenly, kind of, that was the only thing I can describe it or compare it to is if you've ever seen that old movie made in the 80s that had Jodie Foster in it called Contact, where aliens beam info about how to build a weird thing, and she takes a ride around the universe. Well, that happened. And I was exposed to and saw the most incredible things. I felt like being fed with the fire hose. I also felt like if I hadn't been in some kind of a protective bubble, I would have been incinerated in an instant. But I saw and heard unspeakable things, just the glory of universes and things that we don't have language to describe. And that lasted a long time. And then I was back at the doorway and felt out of breath, kind of like hyperventilating. And then I started thinking about what I'd seen, and 4 key principles came into my mind that came from that experience. And here they are. Number 1 is each of us, you, me, and every one of us, is a very intentional, lovingly created divine being. That is a fact. That is a truth. The second thing was that we each have a mission and purpose that we not only agreed to, but we were stoked about before we came. The third was that we were given all the gifts and talents we need to accomplish those agreements. And the fourth was that all the help we need is available from both sides of that door. So I thought about that, and then I asked, well, since that's true, why do we settle for crumbs? And I don't know if in the economy of heaven brevity is a virtue, but the answer was 4 words. He said, "Because you don't believe." And I felt like, oh, of course. I didn't facepalm. I thought about it. But anyway, I said, "Okay, what can I do? What can I do to help with that?" Oh, glad you asked. So then what came next was a framework that I wrote. And I wrote a book called Meeting God at the Door: Conversations, Choices, and Commitments of a Near-Death Experience, in which I describe in much greater detail, all of this. And then the framework that came when I asked, what can I do? And he said, glad you asked. I've written in a companion book called the Book of Context. And the reason I named it that was because, well, that was the name that was given. But we live in a context straitjacket. And what I mean by that is we have a series of beliefs, definitions, experiences, expectations, and perceptions. I call it BDEEP, an acronym, but that limits what we think is possible, what we believe we can have, be, do, accomplish, and all that sort of stuff. And it acts like a straitjacket. So I call it a context straitjacket. And the framework that came in that conversation was about how to change those deep-seated beliefs, how to identify them and change them. And so I wrote that in a companion book called, not surprisingly, the Book of Context. And I put that in a separate book because it was too long to put in one book, and it was, way off from the narrative of the experience itself. So then that second day was by far the longest conversation. And obviously we have no perception of time in a place like that, but it felt really long. The third conversation took place the following day, and I was back at the door. And this time I felt like I was, somebody bouncing on one of those rubber balls that you use to sit, doing, 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 doing. I was all excited, and I was repeating, the four truths and the framework and the context and all that stuff in my mind, really vibrant and excited about it. And we're back at the door, and this time the conversation was one question. And he looked at me and he said, "Are you sure?" And I panicked. I thought, what do you mean, am I sure? Am I stupid? Am I biting off more than I can chew? Am I getting in over my head? Like, what do you mean, am I sure? And so we talked about all those possible things. Can I do this? Will you help me? All of the possible ways that I could interpret that question. And finally, when we discussed that, I said, okay, I'm sure. He said, okay. And that conversation ended. Nothing more was said, but it ended with a finality that I knew we were done. And some 14 days later, 17 total days, I was in a coma. So some 14 days after that third day conversation, I came to consciousness. And it was funny because even then, when I came to consciousness, I was blubbering, I'm sure, about context and the frameworks and as much as I could to nurses and everybody. And, Joy was there and everybody that would listen, anything, and what I had seen and all that sort of stuff. And it was really interesting because you would expect that they would think that you were nuts, but that wasn't so. Later, when I got out of the hospital after a month, the infectious disease specialist said to me, "I need you to come back and tell me what you saw." And I told him about the book that I was going to write, so forth. So he has, that knowledge. But anyway, that was the description itself. And when I got home, I'd lost, in the coma, I'd lost 35 pounds. I couldn't walk. I couldn't move. It completely destroyed my body. The disease that I had was a necrotizing MRSA in both lungs and in the bloodstream. And the infectious disease, it's a teaching hospital, the University of Alberta. The infectious disease head of the department came and told me what I had. And he told me also that the 10-day kill rate of what I had was 100%. In other words, there's no way I could have lived through that. And, I've known that, and he told me that. And it was funny because a month or two ago, I was on a podcast with a nurse, and she was interviewing me, and she asked me some questions, and it wasn't about NDE or anything, but somehow this came up, and I told her the thing that I had, the disease, the infection that I had, and she looked at me and she said, "You can't, you're dead." And I said, "Yeah, I know." And I got the chance to explain what had happened. But anyway, so that's the substance of the experience, and it was a lot longer in terms of depth and detail, but that's the outline of what happened.
Well, I want to share from the support team side as you were going through all of that, because I was in that group while this all happened. And so there are a bunch of us pretty much holding you in our prayers every day. Because you were fine. I saw you in LA at that video event you enjoy. And I mean, you were okay. And then this happened, like it seemed like out of nowhere. And then what I just want the audience to know is that Kellen walks his talk. A lot of people tell stories about their challenges, and but he's so authentically real with you that you feel comfortable being real with him. And what happened after he got well enough that his body could work, he wrote 2 books. And I read both of them and put a testimonial in both of those 2 books. I didn't even know about, I've got your website up if we want to show it about all the other books. But I mean, truly amazing. He got his marching orders and he went right back and fulfilled his commitment. And that you have to know that very few people would do that. People would hide behind their integration period of what they saw and what they experienced. But instead, you got right back and got back to work, which is, can you talk about that? Because that's remarkable, Kellen.
Kathy, I was driven to do that. I made commitments. Like when you make commitments in that place, there are no words. I was going to go do this and that's it. And I thought, well, if you're going to let me live, then I'm doing this. So yeah, I got out of the hospital in July. In October, I went to 4 different speaking events. So between July and October, I had to learn to walk again. I literally couldn't walk up and down the stairs. I had to crawl to the bathroom to start with. And so by October, July, August, September, October, 2.5 months later, I could walk and I had accepted some speaking engagements. And by the time I had gone, I had written both Meeting God at the Door and the Book of Context. And the reason is because that's how important I believed and knew that it was to share that, and not just to share what happened. That's not interesting. I mean, okay, maybe it's interesting, and I'll go talk later. We'll talk in a minute about IANDS. I'm going there to speak at the end of this month. And so from the perspective of what happened, oh, wow, that's interesting. But it's not really very interesting unless we do something with it.
Right.
You and I, we're divine beings and we have a mission.
Yeah.
And we don't need to do anything, but the truth is we come into this world with nothing and we're going to leave with nothing. And the only thing we're going to take home is what we have made of ourselves. That's it. And the way I felt is I don't want to bring excuses. I don't want to bring noise. I don't want to bring anything, because nothing will need to be said as I stand before the Creator, because who I have become will be blindingly obvious for all of us. Mm-hmm. And so my reaction to that was, I'm going to do what I said and continue to do that. I literally, to this day, including today, I have a 2.5-hour morning ritual to prepare myself to be the very best person I can be for every conversation, for every person, for every day, all the time, period.
Oh, and that's beautiful.
That's just what I do because that's who I am.
Well, you were doing a version of that before, because you have always known that love is the gift that you offer. But you also had the hold your feet to the fire.
Oh, I still do that. Make no mistake. When I get clients that tell me they want big goals, the answer is always going to be there is a road. The question is, are you willing to walk it?
Right. And what are you willing to change about in the belief of yourself or in the belief of your reality, because you're constructing all of this. So did that change? I mean, you had already created the results equation, which for anyone that wants to know about it, the book's great. The course was fantastic. It was basically a way to project management, break down big goals into smaller pieces, and then hold yourself accountable. Put it on a calendar every week. And if you couldn't do that time slot, because life happens, you had to move it. You couldn't just delete it. You had to move it. So, and I learned that that's been so helpful for me. So, was there other things that you learned about that you're integrating in besides that? I can show your website if you want with all the books up.
That's okay. One of the books that I wrote after that, a big part of my ability to overcome the past and to get out of the hole that I was in 2007 was to learn forgiveness. And all the 19 books that I've written, every one of them have just been from my own learning. So I wrote them because I went through these different things and I thought, gee, this might be helpful for someone. So this is a book that's published since then. And I've started my 20th book, and it'll be done toward the end of this year, probably published in January, February. But the most recent book, this is one that I would say encapsulates so much. I mean, the story, Meeting God at the Door and Book of Context, are fabulous. This book is the book in which I have poured everything that I have learned in 16 years about how to create a contract with the universe that is powerful and meaningful, and how to have some kind of a daily practice. And Kathy's right. I was using a daily ritual for many, many years. It is much expanded and strengthened now, which I talk about in that book. And the reason is really simple. I mean, we're in the middle of the Olympics right now. Can you imagine an Olympic athlete warming up after their event? Like, that's ridiculous. Yeah. They would get themselves in peak shape mentally and physically before their event. Well, each day we have, like, I don't know why we're created to die every night and get recreated every morning effectively, or sleep away a third of our lives. I don't know. Next time I talk to God, I'll ask him, but I don't care. The fact is, every single day is an event. It is our event. What I wrote that book for is because I wanted to answer the question, how do I get myself prepared to be in top shape, spiritually, physically, emotionally, mentally, to show up for my day? Because the day's going to go by either way. And I choose to be in top shape for my day because I want to. And that doesn't mean I'm frantic. I'm very busy. I write a lot. I coach a lot. I do music, but it's by choice, not by requirement. I don't do anything I don't want to do. I don't have any obligations. I have lots of commitments, and they're things that I choose to love and do. And so what has happened since then is the resolve and the level of commitment is much, much larger, 10, 100, 1,000 times larger. It is bulletproof. That doesn't mean I pretend to be perfect. I'm not. But I am absolutely 100% committed. And one of the most fun things that I do is help people create a document. And I call it a PTAC, a personal truth and commitment document, which is their constitution or contract with the universe. Now, lots of people say to me, well, in fact, yesterday I had a call with a lady I hadn't met before. And she said, yeah, I've got a document. And I asked her if it was memorized. Well, sort of. Do you use it every day? Yeah, no. I said, okay, tell me what function it provides you with. Because if it is the truth of your being, and it isn't written with fire and steel on the walls of your heart, what is it doing? It's a collection of meaningless words. And when I work with clients to create a PTAC, I tell them, look, if you have a document and when you read it to yourself in the mirror, you don't weep and catch on fire every single time, throw it away. Start over. You haven't said anything yet. Wow. So that's the level of commitment I'm talking about, because I am committed to doing everything that I'm able to do, and I'm limited just like everybody else, but I'm committed to do everything I can do to fill the measure of my creation.
Beautiful. So where did you get the instinct to want to reach so many people?
Well, that's a funny story.
That's a
2 years ago. Yeah, it is a big number. 2 years ago, I think it was right after the Ukraine war started. So it was partly into that year. I just had this yearning to try to help and do stuff. And since then, we've had a refugee family, Ukrainian refugee mother and daughter living with us now for over 2 years. But in that same time frame, in that January, February of that year, February actually, when it started, I just had this yearning to reach people with a message of hope, possibility. I call it Your Ultimate Life. You see the URL on the screen. I call living the ultimate life a life of purpose, prosperity, and joy. And I live that. I love every single day, every minute. I don't do anything I don't want to do, but that's so what for me. It's available for you. The question is, will you create it? So in that context, I wanted to reach people, and the number 10 million came to mind. So I thought, I need to reach 10 million people. Now, I have a podcast. I have now 900 and something episodes. I have a weekly live LA talk radio show out of LA. I have a television program called Creative Save the World, and I've written all these books, and I'm on lots of shows. I've been on 400 or 500 podcasts as well as mine own 900. So all of that was in service of that goal. And toward the end of that year in September, I think, because my year ends October 14th, I was on somebody's show and he asked me some questions and we ended up talking about 10 million. And he said, you need a bigger number. And I said, okay, why? And he said, you've been on this show with me for an hour and you have changed my life. And he was weeping. He said, you need a flipping bigger number. I'm going to talk to 1,000 people this week. You need a bigger number. So I thought, okay. And then October came and that year was over. And so I said, okay, 50 million. And people ask me all the time, how do you know? How do you measure? And the answer is, I do the best I can. I measure audience reach and, I do the best I can to estimate. I never expected to get 50 million emails that said, gee, you changed my life. But I do the best that I can. So in that year, the goal was 50 million. And it turned out at the end of that year, when we added up everything that we knew to add up, we'd reached 75 million. And so we achieved that goal. And so this year I set 250 million and we've got 2 months left. And at the end of this year, I'll add it up and do everything that I can to see where we were. So that's how that comes. And I literally, now this is interesting for people that do energy work and all this kind of work that we all do. My business plan is I never look for clients. I look for people to love, opportunities to serve, and problems to solve. And I get paid really, really well. But I never go look for money. I don't work for money. I work to create change and service. And in marrying those things, like the fellow I talked to just before this call, never talked to before, is a good chance he'll become a client. And the reason isn't because I'm going to enroll him. It's because we're going to do something so powerful on our next call that he's going to ask me,
Right.
How do I work with you?
Right.
And that happens all the time. I never propose to people. People always ask, this is fabulous. How do we do more? Oh, would you like to find out? Okay, cool. And then I talk about the possibilities, what I think makes sense based on what we've been talking about. And so my only goal is to reach 250 million people. Wow. Every post, every podcast, every show, every conversation. How do I serve? How do I help you realize who you are? And how do I help you make the best out of yourself?
Well, that's what I have to, I want to compliment you because that was an amazing gift that you have to help people have the confidence, because you have this little voice going, who, me? Who do you think you are kind of voice. And somehow your belief in the fact that I could do it enabled me to do it. But it wasn't like a guilt trip kind of thing. It was like, oh, let's go for it and see. Like I imagine how an Olympic athlete's coach would be. It isn't shame, blame at all. It's upliftment. And let's go for it and see what's out there for you, because we really shut ourselves down. And once you've been on any out of body spiritually transformative experience, whether it's a near death or a spiritually transformative experience, you see how little of the all that we're actually playing with here until we come to that. Someone either shows us that, or something's revealed and we go, okay, I got the memo, I'm going to act on it. The other thing that you did was you had us really know that we had to be truthful to ourselves. And that, I don't know that you'd like to talk about that, but that is an unusual way to coach people, because that was one of the things that I got out of the coaching with you, is the only person I'm lying to when I say I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it later, is I'm lying to myself. I'm not. Do you want to talk about that a little
Yeah,
bit?
that'd be fabulous. But here's a sad truth. We lie all the time. We lie to ourselves, we lie to everybody else, and we pretend we're not. And the worst thing is lying to ourselves. And let me give you some examples. I want you to think of someone that you know right now who, when they tell you, if you ask them to do something or to come here, will you come to this or that? And they say they will, you know what they mean is, if I remember, if I still feel like it, if I don't get a better offer, and if you don't piss me off between now and then. That's what actually is intended. And if any of those things happen and they don't show up or don't do whatever, and they say, oh, but we're just supposed to go, oh, okay. And then that same person, if they really want you to believe them, then they add a bunch of words like, no, I swear. No, really, this time, no, I promise that, and they add a bunch of extra crap, because we don't tell the truth as a matter of course in our world. The most difficult and dangerous thing is when you make promises to yourself that you're going to do something and then you don't. What you do is you teach yourself you can't be trusted. You teach yourself you're a liar. And that is so damaging, because you don't go into things with the expectation of completion and truth. So here's how I teach to change that. If you're having trouble keeping your word to yourself, which is more important than anything else, lots of people tell me, oh, I keep my word to others, but not to myself. Yourself is number one. If you don't keep your word to yourself right now, no big deal. Don't go into some drama spiral about it. But notice, and then shrink the goals, shrink the commitments, and keep shrinking them until I said it, I did it. I said it, I did it becomes the truth of your life, because then you teach yourself you can be trusted, and the words that come out of your mouth create. Your language creates. So your internal language of doubt, fear, and shame creates. Your internal language of I said it, I did it creates. I can promise you, and this is a sacred promise, when I said it, I did it becomes the truth of your life, you can have anything you want. I said it, I did it. So shrink the goals until I said it, I did it becomes true every single time. It's easy to grow the goals, way easier to grow the goals than it is to overcome the mountain of regret, remorse, shame that comes from, well, I've tried. Oh, I meant it. I meant to. I tried. That's all garbage and it's baggage. So shrink your goals until I said it, I did it becomes the truth of who you are. And you now trust every utterance out of your mouth. Then you can gradually increase your goals, making sure I said it, I did it is always true. If you do that, you can have anything you want.
That it was so powerful for me, because you really always felt that you wanted to be taken, that you were an honest, truthful person. And when I learned that from you, it really did change my life quite a bit. Hopefully my goals are still pretty big, but so
you can have whatever you want for goals. I'm not saying have crappy goals, but you won't get there unless, we learn to tell the truth to ourselves.
Yeah. Okay. So the next question is about accountability. When you're being, you're committed to your morning routine, which sets the pace and the energy for the whole day, whether it's exercise, whether it's prayer, whatever it is, right? That's like a sacred gift to give yourself. No matter where you are, you can do it, because it doesn't necessarily need any tools. But then what about accountability? Because that's the other part where we're in Conscious Business Zone, and these people that a lot of the people that are going to watch this and on IANDS later, they're going to think about this. Yeah. Well, how do I find a partner to be accountable with, or a coach to be accountable with? Because there's something about giving that commitment to someone else rather than just writing it on a calendar or putting it on your digital calendar. Could you talk about accountability?
Yeah, and I'm going to make everybody mad.
Oh, good.
The reason we don't keep our word to ourselves or hold ourselves accountable is a lack of self-love.
Oh.
The level to which you love yourself, truly love yourself, is the level to which you hold yourself accountable. Having an external accountability structure or coaching structure is important. It's valuable. It is especially valuable when you're learning to love yourself more and therefore be more accountable. And so I often hear people tell me, well, I keep my word to others. I do what I say to them. I'm accountable to that, but not to myself. And then when I tell them, well, you don't love yourself, it pisses them off sometimes. But it's the truth, because when we keep our word to others, we're worried about what they're going to think of us, or we're going to let somebody down or whatever. And so we place that value higher than the value to yourself, which means you do not truly love yourself. There is no higher form of worship to the divine than to truly love yourself, to care for your spirit, to care for your body, to keep your word so that you feel in integrity. If I'm not in integrity and I go to pray or to meditate, that's a sore spot. I have to do something with that. Forgiveness is available, but forgiveness and making excuses aren't the same thing.
Right.
Pretending stuff away is not the same thing. So accountability, there's three things that I have done since 2007, in the 17 years I've been on this quest, that are the most important three. Number one is to create my own document, which is so powerful that it melts the walls of my mind, my heart, and sometimes my house when I speak those words. Number two is to have a daily creation process. I use that word because morning ritual is so cliche, but a daily creation process that makes the words of that document the truth of my being every single day. And the third is to have a good coaching container where I'm getting coached. And the reason is because accountability is critical. Saying something into the universe, speaking it into the conscious unified field, speaking it into existence is a real and true thing. But it must be accompanied by the energy of integrity, which is, I said it, I did it. So an accountability structure, container, coaching, get a coach is a short way to say that. And make sure it's a coach that makes you tell the truth, that doesn't let you slide with bullshit. What value and growth is there in that? And that isn't about cruelty or being angry. It's about the truth of your own possibility. And so having a coaching container where accountability is a main function, where you're clear on your goals. People say goals want to make more money. Well, if you can't tell me exactly how much and by when, like do what by when, if you can't answer that question, that's not a goal. That's just a piece of vaporware. So, and then creating an accountability structure is critical to helping you have the best chance to do it. So that's what I do with accountability, and it's a critical piece of every coaching relationship.
Yes, and I can say the experience I had with Kellen is that he holds you accountable, but he doesn't shame you. That's it's not like tough love. It is love, and then you learn to love yourself enough to do what you said you really wanted to do, what made your heart sing. So let's go on a little bit. I'd love to show your website and show the books. Is that okay with you?
Sure. Anything you want to do, go right ahead.
Okay. So here we go. So people can see all your incredible work, and you can see that was Kellen those pictures were taken after you got out of the hospital. So, and here is the new books, which I don't have all of these yet.
No, if I hold this one up, I would, if a person wanted to, people ask me all the time, which book should I start with? And my answer is always depends on what you want. If you want to read about the NDE, meeting God at the door. If you want to read about the results equation, which is a way about getting things done, fine. If you want to read my own personal story, start with Tightrope. If you want to learn how to write a book, start with the story arc. But this one is the most recent book, and it's not on there yet.
Yeah, okay.
We haven't created that yet, and neither is the book Forgiveness. I don't think that one's on there yet either. But so we need to redo those, and I'm starting number 20 right now, and I'll be done in a few months. Just figure out your purpose. The book isn't going to do anything for you. You can go to any conference you want or coach with anyone you want. It's not going to do the work. You can watch 1,000 YouTube videos of someone doing push-ups and your arms won't get any bigger. You have to do, I call them PD push-ups, personal development push-ups. And the shape of those push-ups is different, depending on the goal you're trying to accomplish, keeping your word, or being in integrity with your intent, or your relationship with your partner, and whether or not you're being who you seem to be. One of the things in my own PTAC, my personal truth. Well, that's the other thing. I never share that, but I did share my documents in this book. And the reason I did isn't to tell anybody what they needed to do, but to give an example. So that's the only place I've ever shared my documents. But one statement in my document is, I am my word. I speak only truth. I do what I say. I am who I seem, with simplicity, transparency, and integrity. Now, making that part of my being and conscious creation every single morning reminds me to guard my mouth, to guard my internal dialogue. What is true? What is actual? What is real? What can I depend on? What would I speak to my creator? And so that kind of reminder every single day, in the way that you can learn to do it, is such a powerful force for good, for creation, for love, and for creativity.
Perfect. Thank you. So I want everyone to know that you are going to be a speaker at this year's IANDS conference in Phoenix. And every year for the past 3 or 4 years, I've been a volunteer for them for 7 years. I've been sending you the form to fill out to be a speaker because I know you're going to just help so many people. But this year you get to do it, and you're going to talk about how your NDEs changed you. Is there anything you want to talk about with that? Because I want people to know that if you can't be in Phoenix for the IANDS conference, that most of the presentations are recorded, and you can get an online ticket and watch it instead of Netflix for every dinner for the next year. But and the energy, you'll see the energy of getting 300 to 500 near-death experiencers in one area is like going home. It is a field of palpable love and knowing, where people came back from that place and they want to live that energy here. And so it becomes almost a portal of divine light. You'll see, Kellen, when you walk in and go, they know what I know.
I can't wait. It was funny because when I first applied, and I want to thank you for bugging me to do that. I had actually applied 2 other times and they didn't select me. This year they did. And the first thing they gave me was a shared hour. There were going to be 2 of us that got a half hour each to just tell what happened. And then they got back to me a few weeks later and changed it to a full hour on Friday for a presentation. So I get a full-blown Prezi. And I'm not one to use slides, and so I'm not going to. My experience with speaking is that I'm a captivating enough speaker that I can hold everybody's attention riveted. I always know because nobody's looking at their phone when I'm talking. But anyway, so I'm speaking on Friday early afternoon, 4 or 5 o'clock or something on Friday for an hour. And here's the thing. Events happen to us, right? It might be a tragic event where you get in a car wreck and you lose a limb. A loved one might die. You might declare bankruptcy. You might get sick and die like I did, or have some other amazing experience with the infinite. The events of themselves don't do anything unless you listen and allow. When I had the divine intervention in 2007, which we didn't have time to talk about today, but it's written in the book Tightrope of Depression, if you're interested in what happened there. When those things happen, they only matter if you integrate, Kathy mentioned that, but then if you allow it to change you, and they matter to the extent they change you. Someone said to me once, the meaning of something is the difference it makes. If it makes no difference, it has no meaning.
Beautiful.
And so if you think about the difference, whether you've had an experience or you listen to someone else's, there were a certain number of people that saw Jesus when he was here. And that was only a few, a few hundred or a few thousand. And compared to the billions, well, it is through the shared experience of that individual and others that we pass things on and learn. And the only thing that matters is the difference you choose to allow an experience to make in your life. And that is your choice every time, all the time. If you're trying to go somewhere to have to have it do it for you, you're going to be searching for the rest of your life to go find the thing that's going to do your push-ups. It ain't going to happen.
Well, what I find and what I wanted to share is that it's a remembering. Partially, this conference gives you other articulation for things that you feel. When you've had a spiritually transformative experience like this, you don't necessarily have the words to express it, but you feel it. It's visceral. It's in your system, and the words that other people have about their mystical experience somehow grounds more of your at least in my case, my articulation. That's my interest in it. And I think the energy of it is grounds new people's, because there's a lot of people that come to these conferences that have had no one to talk to. They've had no one that understood, or they came back. At one point, the past president, Diane Cochran, who was a colonel in the Army, she talked about how a lot of the suicides in the Army and the military are people that actually had near-death experiences, and they're being treated for PTSD instead of near-death experiences. And all they wanted was someone to listen to them and validate them. And they left. Before the experience, they were an obedient killing machine. And then when they came back, they couldn't harm anything. So here's somebody that may have used a whole bunch of cuss words and rode a motorcycle and had tattoos, and they come back as this totally different loving being that couldn't hurt a fly. And their whole environment is going, where'd my husband go? Where'd my best friend go? Where'd my employee go? And so this conference, this organization, the International Association for Near-Death Studies, has been in existence over 40 years, and it's filled with researchers that have validated all of this, as well as people like who I mentioned, Diane Cochran, who was trying desperately. She's passed now, but she was trying desperately to get this information out so that the medical system within the veterans healthcare system would know about near death and have a way to prescribe the right remedies for it. But this is what you have to understand: is this movement is for people not to be afraid of death. That's really what it comes down to.
I love that. I'm going to share one other book that I wrote that was on that page. I wrote a book called Walking Without Fear. And that didn't come out of the near-death experience. It came out of something that happened 6 months later in December of 2018. But people ask often, in the coaching world comes up, what are you afraid of? And it occurs to me, and I say this in all sincerity, that I don't have any fears. Fear is an emotion I no longer experience. And someone says, well, how could that possibly be? And I look at them very sincerely and say, what on earth do I have to be afraid of?
So cool.
There's simply nothing that elicits that emotion in me anymore, because I understand who we are, why we're here, and what's going on. And there's nothing to be afraid of.
Isn't that cool? That's so cool. Well, I want to share this comment that Sarah wrote off of LinkedIn. Had a recent conversation wherein I finally understood that self-love isn't about pampering oneself, always felt shallow to me, but more about being the parent my wounded inner child needs to heal. What you shared about accountability resonated because as loving parent holds her children accountable. Boom. God is definitely talking to me today. Thanks for sharing.
You're welcome.
Yeah. And we'll see. I'm sure, Kellen, more and more and more people will resonate with what you're having to say, because this is the time for the truth to be revealed. You can see it in everything in our world right now. And if we truly want to live with love and kindness for ourselves and others, and maybe there are no others, but anyway, that's another story. This is the time to commit to that and to do whatever you can to be around other people that commit to that, so that we can have the world that is intended.
My experience is that we're built as human beings, both physically and spiritually, to love and serve. We get good neurotransmitters in our physical body when we do that, and I'm quite certain there is a spiritual analog of neurotransmitters. It's, we get jazzed, we feel good, it's exciting when we're in love and service. And yes, we need to eat, and yes, we need to make money, and I make good money. I'm not pretending I don't. I did as an executive, I do as a coach, but it's got nothing to do with that. That is a byproduct of value. It is a byproduct of service. And quite frankly, I notice that when I coach people for free, they don't change anything. When they bring a bunch of money and they invest it, then they pay attention. And sometimes people ask me, why do you charge what you charge? And the answer is really simple. I don't need your money. I need your attention. And when you paid that much money, then I have your attention.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Well, and who said that being spiritual and being wealthy don't go together? I mean, that's the other thing, is like that when you've seen the bigger picture of all of this, we're creating it all every day as we speak. So that's the thing. I just want to encourage everyone who hasn't known about Kellen before to go to his website, which you have two. I put the other website up.
It's fine. Yourultimatelife.ca is where there's a freebie, 5 master keys to creating your ultimate life. My name, KellanFluckiger.com. My books are on Amazon. When you got a weird name like Kellan Fluckiger, you can't hide. So if you spell it right, you can find me. And if you tell me you can't find me, you're either not trying or you spelled it wrong.
Oh, that's funny. And if you pronounce it wrong, you're in trouble. So anyway, well, thank you so much, Kellen. And I know you're going to do incredibly well at IANDS. And I just wish you so much love and happiness, and just appreciate you so much. So thank you again for today. And let's keep more in touch, because you're a force to be reckoned with, man.
Well, I hope to be a force to lift and bless 250 million this year. Wow. You and your audience are included.
Yes, of course, of course. And again, you guys, Kellen will be a speaker at the IANDS conference. And the way that you can get that information is go to IANDS.org or conference.IANDS.org. And please don't miss this opportunity to see the bigger picture and be blessed by all of this knowledge. Thank you, Kellen. Bye, dear. Thank you
Bye-bye.
all. Thank you. Bye-bye.